6-year-old Dennis Martin was playing hide-and-seek with his family in the Great Smoky Mountains. And by the end of that day, he had vanished without a trace and sparked one of the largest search operations in National Park Service history, still to this very day. But Dennis Martin's disappearance was just the beginning of a much stranger story. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you what happened. There's so much legend and mystery and myth and folklore in the Appalachian area, and it's finally time I do a bit of a deep dive video, rabbit hole on it, kind of, if you will. I'm not exactly sure. This video is going to be long and it's going to be full of a lot of really wild stuff. So go ahead and hit the like button if you want to see more, I guess. Right? This is the Holy Relic cam. Let's put some Holy Relic graphics on the screen. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button, my friends. Today we're talking about Appalachia. I love Appalachia. Dennis Martin was 5 days away from his 7th birthday when his family took him on his first overnight camping trip in the Smoky Mountains. By the way, this is the geographical location of the Smoky Mountains. It was Father's Day weekend, and 3 generations of the Martin family had hiked up to Spence Field, a 200-acre meadow sitting nearly 5,000 feet above sea level on the Tennessee-North Carolina border. By the way, driving anywhere between Tennessee and North Carolina is terrible. It's not fun. One time I had a migraine and I had to pull off the road because I was gonna throw up. So bad. So many turns and hairpins going 55. I just ain't cut out for it, I guess. That's why I moved to Texas. I like it flat and straight. Dennis was with his father, William, his 9-year-old brother, Douglas, and his grandfather, Clyde. And they'd hiked 10 miles the day before from Cades Cove, camping overnight at Russell Field before making the final push to Spence Field that morning. And when they arrived at the meadow, they found another family already there. Dr. Carter Martin's family from Alabama. No relation to the Tennessee Martins, just a coinkydink. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the kids came up with a game, an idea for a game. These are not experts in the development of games, and their design, quite frankly, was poor, but they were going to sneak around and surprise the adults. The plan was simple. Douglas and the other children would approach from one direction while Dennis would circle around from the other side and jump out and scare them, kind of like this. Not really anything like that. Not really anything like that. That was dumb. I should have done that. But unfortunately, there was a problem. Dennis was wearing a bright red shirt that would totally give him away. So the older kids told him he'd have to go alone and circle around the far side of the field where the thick rhododendron bushes would hide his insanely red shirt. William Martin watched his son walk toward the tree line, and the red shirt made Dennis easy to track as he picked his way through the mountain laurel and rhododendron. If you don't know what that looks like, it's just, thick kind of brush. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, especially mountain laurel. After about 5 minutes, Douglas and the other kids executed their part perfectly, jumping out and surprising the adults with shouts and laughter. Everybody played along, acting startled and scolding the children with smiles on their faces. Obviously, it's a classic children's game. It's poorly designed, but still, it's what kids do, I think. But Dennis never showed back up, and his father, William, looked toward where he had last seen his son's red shirt disappearing into the bushes. He called his name. There was no answer. He called again, louder. He then started to worry and kept on calling, but still nothing. The thing was, Dennis was an obedient kid who always came when called. He wasn't the type to wander off and hide when he heard, especially concern in the voice of his father. William started to search toward the trees, and grandfather Clyde searched in the opposite direction. Both Martin families spread out across the meadow, calling Dennis's name, trying to find him. And by 6 p.m. that same day, as daylight started to fade and the temperature started dropping, they all knew something was terribly wrong. But this is where and why the story gets really strange. A lot of you, I'm sure, have heard of this missing persons case in Appalachia. It's one of the most famous missing persons cases of all time. It's just a kid who was there 1 minute and then he disappears the next. 7 miles southwest of Spence Field, near a place called Sea Branch, a man named Harold Key was having a picnic with his family, and at some point between 6 o'clock and 6:45, a couple hours after Dennis had disappeared, Harold heard something that haunted him and has haunted him for the rest of his life. It was a scream that Harold later described as enormous and sickening and fundamentally wrong. It wasn't the cry of an animal or anything he'd ever heard in his decades of mountain living. It wasn't a human in distress. It was something else entirely. The scream caused Harold and his family to look up from their meal and scan the tree line. And within minutes of that otherworldly scream, they saw something. A man emerged from the woods moving fast through the undergrowth and brush, but it wasn't a hiker or anything usual. This man moved like he was being pursued or like he was pursuing something. His appearance was disturbing to them. He was unkempt, he had hair past his shoulders, torn and dirty clothes, and it looked like he'd been living rough in the mountains for months. He was kind of like the wild man in Red Dead Redemption 2. Could never get that son of a bitch. I don't actually think you can get him, to be honest. So you say you got him, you are a liar. I don't even think you can get him, all right? So don't try to act like you're better than us. Over the man's shoulder, Harold and his family said they saw it looked like he carried something that was similar to cloth or clothing. And the moment the strange man spotted the Key family watching him, he immediately changed course and plunged deeper into the forest, then disappeared completely. And Harold Key carefully noted the time between 6 and 6:45 p.m. on June 14th. This was 1969. So if we think about the timeline, that's Dennis Martin disappearing at 4:30 p.m. from Spence Field, and 2 hours later, 7 miles away, Harold Key hears a beast scream and saw a wild man carrying what appeared to be some kind of clothing. Could a 6-year-old child cover 7 miles of wilderness on his own? I don't think so. It seems impossible. But could something have carried him that far? Also unsure. And as darkness fell, Clyde Martin, the grandfather, hiked 9 miles down the mountain to report Dennis missing. And behind him was a massive storm that was building. By the way, this is pre-cell phone, pre-internet. You had to actually go out and report people missing to the proper channels and authorities. This is a totally different time. It was much more difficult to find the missing in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and before that, before the internet and surveillance and all this stuff. By the time Clyde reached the ranger station, it was raining heavily, 2.5 inches in 3 hours, and that would wash away any trail that Dennis might have left. Following the incident was an unprecedented search. Over 1,400 volunteers scoured 56 square miles of the Smoky Mountains looking for Dennis. This lasted 16 days. There were FBI agents that opened case files. Green Berets fresh from Vietnam joined the hunt, and the operation became so large it started destroying evidence from just all of the people walking around. There were so many people trying to find Dennis. And 3 days after Dennis disappeared, searchers found something that changed everything. They found child-sized footprints in the mud near Eagle Creek, several miles from Spence Field. The tracks told a bit more of a disturbing story as well. One foot was barefoot, and the other showed the pattern of a boy's Oxford shoe in size 2.5, which was exactly what Dennis had been wearing. The prints led towards water and then simply stopped, and park officials immediately dismissed the evidence for some reason. They said the footprints must belong to a Boy Scout in the search party because they were too far from Dennis' last known location, and they were made by someone older than 6, which I don't understand how you, I mean, looking back, obviously hindsight's 2020, but it seems absurd to just be like, definitely not Dennis at all. Retired park ranger Dwight McCarter studied those footprints for decades. He said that the tracks weren't part of a group pattern. They led away from the search area and not towards it, and they showed purpose and direction, not the random wandering of a lost child. And also, none of the children who were searching had been barefoot either, so a huge plot hole in the weird excuse for that. The official search continued for 2 more weeks before ending in utter failure. Dennis Martin was never found. There was no trace of his clothing ever discovered, and no remains were ever recovered. He simply ceased to exist at 4:30 p.m. on June 14th, 1969, which is completely fucking mind-boggling that has happened. It's so well covered, and it has happened multiple times outside of just this lone story. The most curious part about all of this, it's a terrible part as well, but it is certainly curious, is that Dennis Martin's disappearance isn't necessarily unique. The Appalachian Mountains generate more unexplained phenomena per square mile than anywhere else in North America. You can ask anybody who's lived there, and if you read any forums, or any forums, what am I, old? If you look on the internet and you search Appalachia, scary, Appalachia, skinwalker, you're gonna find a lot of Insane stories. I myself have stories. But around national parks across the US and seemingly more so in remote locations in Appalachia, children, people, they vanish in areas where they just shouldn't be able to disappear. Search dogs lose scent trails at strange points, and experienced hikers are found in impossible locations dead. There's something different about Appalachia. That's what we're talking about today. Something different about Appalachia. Something in the water maybe. So you've definitely heard that Appalachia is spooky and scary, and don't go into the woods at night in Appalachia. You'll hear whatever, that's a lot of that. I've gone into the woods a lot at night. I'm still alive. But what makes the Appalachian Mountains so different? Why do more people disappear in Appalachian parks than in parks 10 times the size? The answer potentially lies in something called thin places, which are areas that the normal rules of reality seem to break down. And these thin places, the theory of this has existed for thousands of years. Researcher David Politis has spent years documenting what he calls missing 411 cases, which are disappearances that follow disturbing patterns. And in the Appalachian Mountains, these patterns are everywhere. Like I said, children, people vanish from areas where they shouldn't be able to disappear. Search dogs lose scent trails at specific geographic points, the same points over and over. This is information from David Politis. And experienced hikers are found in locations that should be impossible to reach given their physical condition. All of these things, some I've gone over already, are things that are consistent in these cases, and these cases are consistent in the Appalachian region. What's strange as well is that these occurrences aren't exactly random. They follow a level of pattern geographically. So a bit of exposition in regard to Appalachia. It's very interesting. You're going to want to hear this. The Appalachian Mountains, if you didn't know, are 480 million years old. They've been through 4 separate mountain building events that geologists call orogenies: the Grenville, Taconic, Acadian, and Alleghanian. All insanely cool names. And all this geological violence created an electromagnetic configuration that exists nowhere else on Earth. Dr. Michael Persinger at Laurentian University proved that electromagnetic fields can alter human consciousness in scientifically measurable ways. Using his God helmet device, a device that generates weak magnetic fields barely stronger than a hairdryer, he can induce supernatural experiences in 80% of his test subjects. People reported sensing mysterious presences, missing time, out-of-body experiences, and encounters with spiritual entities, and the same electromagnetic patterns that Persinger created for his studies and science shit also naturally occur in the Appalachian Mountains. There is something called the Brunswick magnetic anomaly that stretches from South Carolina to Pennsylvania, and in these areas that fit into that anomaly, compasses spin wildly and electronic equipment fails without explanation. This is real. Dr. Karen Fisher at Brown University found that the lithosphere, the Earth's protective electromagnetic barrier, is also abnormally thin beneath the mountains as well. The region is also loaded with quartz deposits, and when tectonic pressure hits quartz, it generates piezoelectric fields. And if you don't know what that is, here's what a piezoelectric field is. Piezoelectricity is so cool. And this creates localized zones where the normal rules of space and time, quite literally, break down. Thanks, Obama. Ooh, yes! So Persinger's research shows that when tectonic plates shift, they can generate electromagnetic anomalies that trigger activity in the temporal lobe of the human brain. And that is the same brain region associated with mystical experiences, missing time, and altered perception. In laboratory conditions, temporal lobe stimulation produces hallucinations, spiritual encounters, and memory gaps that mirrors what happens in what missing 411 survivors report. By the way, I believe all this stuff. Sure, there's scientific backing for some of it, but specifically in Appalachia, I've had a very bizarre experience where I've never been more afraid in my entire life, and I'm a pretty scared guy. I like getting scared of stuff, but I fight. I don't flight. I fight. I don't flight. One time I really flighted though, bad. I'll tell you my stupid story at the end of the video, but it's so bizarre. Anyways, the Appalachians are basically a massive natural version of Persinger's experimental God helmet chamber. By the way, this is purely speculation from me. I don't know if anybody's ever made this connection before. I shouldn't say that. But this is speculation. Of course someone's thought of this before. How f***ing dumb can one man be? This guy! Yeah! Press like! Woo! Hey now! Take a seat. Take a seat now. Come on. Take a seat. Can I hold a 20? I'm hungry. Need to get me a sandwich. So yeah, it's pretty scary. Imagine being an old colonist or something too, and you come over and you're from Scotland, and damp is like a really common color. And you come to the Appalachian Mountains, and it's so beautiful. And then you encounter a transcendental, spiritual, religious experience, because you're just hanging out in the Appalachian Mountains and your worldview can't accommodate it. So then you start making legends and myths, and you start saying, oh my God, there's a beast out there in the woods out there. Because every time I go out there, my hair stands on the back of my neck and it feels like I'm getting looked at. I mean, I'm from Scotland or whatever. The guy said he was Scottish. The Appalachian Mountains generate more of these experiences than anywhere else in the world because their geological structure creates conditions where the impossible becomes possible and the inevitable becomes inevitable. By the way, I just said with total confidence. I'm making that up. That's literally what I think. I don't know though. I'm not very good at saying things matter-of-factly, you know? Except for that does not look good. Never mind, I've been working out a lot. Power Boys channel, go to Power Boys. I got a new channel with a couple of my bros. The mountains, they don't just inspire folklore, they demand folklore. The thin places create both the disappearances and the legends that attempt to explain the disappearances. And that's the thin place. There's a lot more information on the thin place. I didn't make that up. There's stories that Stonehenge is a thin place and all these interesting mystical areas and Egyptian pyramids. There's all these thin places. It's just a way to explain an area, a geographical area that relates to something that is occurring that you cannot explain with your worldview. That's a thin place. Appalachia, big, very, very thin place. I was gonna say big, thin place, but that cancels itself out. You see that title? Pretty good, isn't it? Pretty good name, isn't it? I like that name. I thought that was really cool. The folklore conundrum, I was going to use the word conundrum because I've been trying to use that one lately, but Folklore Factory makes a lot more sense. When strange things happen regularly, people need explanations because we're people, you know? And in Appalachia, strange things happen quite a bit. Remember that Scottish guy I talked about? Think about it. You're living in a remote mountain hollow where children occasionally disappear and reappear miles away with no memory of how they got there. They just disappear and never come back. Families vanish from campsites without disturbing anything around them. Hunters encounter beings that shouldn't exist according to modern science, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. You can't just dismiss these things as hallucinations when they keep happening to your neighbors, your family, your community, etc. You need frameworks to understand these things, and you need stories that can contain these experiences. That's how people have been doing things for a really long time. Take a seat. I'm gonna tell you. And that's what makes Appalachia a folklore factory. Boom. First comes the geographic isolation. Mountain families in remote hollows had nowhere to turn except to their own communities for interpretation of insane and impossible events. When something unexplainable happens, they can't call the authorities or consult experts. They had to figure it out themselves. And they weren't always the brightest, let's be real. Becoming self-reliant in matters of explanation is the Appalachian way. You know, these folks develop their own framework for events like these. For example, a child disappeared in a thin place. The community has to tell a story that can contain such an experience and teach others potentially how to survive. That's where myths and legends and a lot of the folklore and stuff comes from, is to just imbue some kind of survival instinct, and it's based off something that happened a long time ago to people that you don't know and you've never met. And it probably what happened to them has grossly changed through the story. You know, Bigfoot, for example, big guy, not Bigfoot, big guy, just a huge guy. Big fist, hit you on the head, kill you dead. Big hairy guy, I know a couple big hairy guys. If I got killed and like my friend saw it and told that story 15,000 years in the future, That's Bigfoot out there, beating the shit out of people with his big old hairy fist. Interdimensional time traveler. I could see that happening, and I'm Appalachian, I know. Secondly, oral tradition amplifies these things. If I were to have written my story down, or my friend who witnessed me getting hit over the head with a large fist by a big guy, we would know exactly what happened. But oral tradition amplifies everything, and to be honest, in a culture where few people could read throughout a couple centuries, oral stories carry the full weight of the transmission of culture. Information becomes polished through countless retellings until it achieves a mythic permanence and a level of legend. Each storyteller adds their own details and their own connections to other experiences. Think of how terrible my videos are, and imagine if someone tried to take this video and just do it again in a different way. Thirdly is a very diverse cultural convergence in Appalachia that provides a unique vocabulary for all these things and unique explanations for all of these things. The Appalachian Mountains were settled by people from different backgrounds, each bringing their own explanatory systems. There is more than a dozen different Native American tribes that settled the area. Cherokee, very well known. Shawnee, very well known. And the Native American culture and stories had explanations for geographic horrible hotspots. Celtic people that moved there, they had second sight, which interpreted enhanced perception of different things. They witnessed unique things in their settling of the Appalachian Mountains. Germanic people settled the Appalachian Mountains as well. They had this thing called powwowing, which I think they stole the word from somebody else, but it provided these bizarre healing pagan techniques for supernatural encounters. We also have a kiss of African hoodoo to tie into the culture of Appalachia as well. By the late 19th century, basically every hollow had its own bestiary of creatures, its own stories, catalog of dangerous locations, dangerous locations, and roster of families with special gifts and magic talents. It's a big thing in Appalachia. Magic people. Then finally you take all these variables and then you isolate them and preserve the stories outside interference of urban America or schools or science or all that bullshit. You got a whole hell of a lot of people who refuse to dismiss folklore as primitive superstition, which I love. To be honest, to be frank with you, they're not stories. It's a survival guide. Yeah. I don't know. I've only been really afraid once up there in the mountains up there. And now, thanks to the internet, we have what we have, which is an ass load of myth, legend, stories that are all so incredibly interesting. And that's what we're going to be talking about further in today's video. I wanted to give you a little bit of a primer. Let me introduce you all to the stars of the channel, the real stars, behind the scenes heroes. These are my two little best friends in the whole world. They mean the world to me. I used to stress a lot about what I would feed my dogs. Things have gotten really easy since I switched to Sundays for my little puppies. Obviously, I want to give my pups the best food that is possible. Raw food takes up too much freezer space. Kibble's just kind of bad. And that's where Sundays comes in. It's delicious. It actually tastes pretty good. I've eaten it. I wouldn't recommend eating it. It is for dogs. But my dogs love it. Sundays has completely changed my beautiful little princesses' lives. Sundays is made from 100% human grade ingredients. It's real meat and some superfoods with zero synthetics and zero artificial, nasty, disgusting preservatives. Luckily with Sundays, it makes feeding my dogs a very healthy diet easy. The product's awesome, no freezer space needed. It's vet formulated and made in the USA. Give your dog a chance to try Sundays today. Use code OOMPA at checkout. Get 50% off your first order. Trust me, your dog will thank you for it. That's code OOMPA at Sundays for Dogs or sundaysfordogs.com/OOMPA to get 50% off your first order. Thank you to Sundays for sponsoring this video. This one is okay. This is the Beast of Bladenboro, aka the Blood Vampire, aka the Big Sucker 9000. I don't know. I made that up. In January of 1954, something started killing animals around Bladenboro, North Carolina. But it wasn't killing them in a way that normal predators might kill something like that. It was draining them of their blood, guys. It was draining them of their blood. Police Chief Roy Forrest had seen plenty of animal attacks before, but when he examined the dead dogs on New Year's Eve in 1953, he knew something was wrong. Something was very wrong. There were no defensive wounds, no scattered fur from a struggle. The animals looked like they had been emptied. It was that simple. The animals looked like they had been drained of their blood. And even a quote from the autopsy confirmed this. There weren't more than 2 or 3 drops of blood in them. That was my Appalachian impression. I know a lot of folk up on there. Another bizarre detail is that the wounds each animal faced were basically identical. There was surgical precision, jawbone smashed, bottom lips split. Something was methodically and systematically draining the life out of these animals. So this was Bladenboro, a small town of 800 people. Usually their news was about the price of tobacco or high school basketball. But over 13 days in January of 1954, something came out of the pine forest out there, and it turned Bladenboro from a sleepy, regular-ass Appalachian town to a nightmareville. Scary beast, something's draining creatures of blood. The story does get a lot more strange. On December 29th in 1953, a woman in a nearby town called Clarkton saw a large cat-like creature disappearing into the darkness. Her neighbor's dogs were missing by morning. And a few days later, on January 1st, Johnny Vous discovered the method. He said, "My dogs put up a good fight. There was blood all over the porch, big puddles of it, and there was a pool of saliva on the porch as well. It killed one dog at 10:30 and left it lying there, and my dad wrapped the dog up in a blanket, and that thing came back and got that dog, and nobody's seen it since. And at 1:30 in the morning, it came back and killed the other dog and took it off." They found the second dog 3 days later, and, quote, "The top of one of the dog's heads was torn off and its body was crushed and wet like it had been in that thing's mouth, and the other dog's lower jaw was completely torn off." 2 days later, January 3rd, Police Chief Flores, guy we've mentioned before, brought his trained coonhounds to track the killer. These dogs, if you don't know, are bred to pursue anything, specifically raccoons, all right? Anything with 4 legs. But when they caught the scent of this creature, they immediately recoiled, and they refused to follow the trail and were whimpering as they backed away from whatever trace the creature had left behind. Probably Taco Bell diarrhea. No, I shouldn't joke. I have a real good way of just derailing everything. The autopsy happened that day, and it confirmed what Flores feared. The animals weren't being eaten, they were being drained of their blood. On January 5th, a family's pet rabbit was found cleanly decapitated and still warm, and that same day, a man named Tater Shaw, best name ever, witnessed something that would haunt him for the rest of his old tater life. That sumbitch is a tumor. He found a goat with its skull crushed flat. He said, "His head was flat as a fritter." Come on, man, yeah, come on. Hey, take a seat, mother. Shaw remembered the event decades later. He said, "It had a great big old crack, it was word." And Shaw spread 4 fingers across his palm to show the paw prints the size of silver dollars, bigger than my small baby hands. But it's not over. On January 6th, Mrs. C.E. Kinlaw stepped onto her front porch at 7:30 p.m. to hang laundry, and 20 feet away in the gathering darkness, the beast was waiting for her. The 21-year-old mother looked up to see a large cat-like creature moving toward her with deliberate intent. Its eyes reflected the porch lights as it sized up this new prey, the first human that it had reportedly approached. Mrs. Kinlaw screamed and ran inside, and her husband Charles grabbed his shotgun and rushed out, but only found cat-like paw prints bigger than a silver dollar scattered across the yard. So, the beast that was methodically killing with surgical precision all kinds of dogs and other creatures had shown an interest in human blood. You know who else has an interest in human blood? Frankie does.
Frankie, come here, buddy. Come here, buddy. Come on, Frankie. Come on, Frankie. Come on.
Good girl. Yeah, that's right. She doesn't like the relic very much.
Okay, Frankie. Okay, come on. Okay, have a bite, Frankie. Have a bite, Frankie. Have a bite.
Oh, she's on my body. After this, panic spread through Bladenboro. Women locked themselves indoors after sunset, and men who had never owned firearms bought shotguns and pistols. Liberals! Families with outdoor privies started using chamber pots inside their houses to avoid nighttime trips to the old pooper right there. But I tell you what the... Then came the sound of the creature, and that was one of the worst parts. Aside from the draining animals of blood, of course. Witnesses described the same unearthly cry like a baby crying or a woman with a knife stuck in her back. Oh! I like to imagine that's what, or a baby is, babies are so annoying, dude. Professional hunter S.W. Garrett heard this sound while tracking and compared it to a panther scream, but admitted he had never heard anything quite like it. There's theories them old skunk ape up in there, or not skunk ape, wampus beast. And also, I've seen so there's cougars, allegedly, that have traversed. There's one that they found, I think, in Connecticut. Pretty sure. I don't know why I don't think of this stuff when I'm writing the doc and I have to like make shit up. I don't know. I'm such an idiot. I'm going off the beaten path here. There's a cougar though that they found really far into New England, which means it's perfectly feasible that one could be in Appalachian, of course. And I swear on my mother's life, my family found cougar, well, large cat. I don't want to say cougar, especially if I'm swearing on my mother's life, all right? But large cat-like prints that were really large, that were really big. And then the distance between the actual prints, this is in fresh snow, by the way. The distance between the prints was like 13 feet. It's very scary. I remember finding that as a young boy in Gore, Virginia, near the West Virginia line. Anyways, back to this story. The cry echoed through the pine forest. It was a sound that would make blood freeze and would turn brave men into little bitch chicken shits. Beyond this, witnesses of the creature paint a picture of something that defies classification. 4.5 feet long, bushy, resembling either a bear or a panther, and some weights estimate ranges around 80 to 150 pounds, and some estimate more. Some base the weight on how it crashed through underbrush. The tracks that were found showed claws at least an inch long, and some described it as brownish and tabby, and others as dark with a cat-like face. But all witnesses agreed on one detail. It moved with a predatory intelligence and circled its prey with patience of something that had all the time in the world. Classic big cat style. By January 7th, nearly 1,000 hunters had descended on Bladenboro, and professional big game hunters who had killed lions in Africa, and fraternity brothers from the UNC Chapel Hill looking for a trophy, farmers with bird dogs and rabbit guns. They were all convinced that they would be the one to bag the beast of Bladenboro. Nobody succeeded, obviously. That would have been crazy if somebody shot a encrypted. Nobody's ever found one. Ever. A cryptid. Nobody's ever found one. Have you ever noticed that? Nobody's ever found one? That bothers me. People found some weird shit too. Some hard to find shit. Mayor Woodrow Fussell owned the local movie theater and had the instincts of a born showman. And as hunters poured into his town, he made a phone call to Charlotte and booked a film for January 9th called The Big Cats. And his advertisements read, "Now you can see the cat. We've got him on the screen and in Technicolor." Because of genius. And the same day the movie played, Fussell called off the hunt. There were too many guns, too much desperation, and too much of a chance that an overexcited hunter might shoot somebody. Shoot somebody, because that happens too, man. The Wilmington Morning Star headline captured this moment perfectly. Vampire Beast wins Battle of Bladenboro. What kind of gun would you have taken to get you Beast of Bladenboro? I would have taken one of these. I would have taken probably this to fight the Beast of Bladenboro, potentially. 300 blackout. Pretty unique, I guess. Could have been interesting, for sure. I like this little thing. It's nice. Eddie, kill a beast out there, I tell you what. On January 13th, Luther Davis found a bobcat struggling in a steel trap 4 miles from town. He shot it and dragged it to the town square, where Mayor Fussell hung it from a flagpole with the sign, "This is the Beast of Bladenboro." The killing stopped, and the hunters went home, and the newspapers moved on. But my opinion, that was not the Beast of Bladenboro. Come on, a bobcat? They're not that scary. Sure, they sound like a screaming woman who's been stabbed with a knife in her back, kind of like that scream that I made earlier. Questions are still out there remaining, okay, guys? Sure, bobcats are loud and annoying, but they don't drain creatures. Could a 20-pound bobcat kill a 90-pound dog and drain it of blood? How did it crush skulls and smash jaws with surgical precision? Brother, I'm not exactly sure. Also, why do the tracking dogs, bred for courage and confidence and following things, why do they refuse to follow its trail? Because it's cute? That doesn't seem logical. Or does it? I feel like he ain't doing enough right now. Should I get rid of the Holy Relic cam? I also have this camera, which I haven't even used yet.
Hey man, come on now, son bitch. Look at these aliens down here. Come on now. What the hell are you doing fucking over there? What the?
Get this though. Years later, Meryl, get this though. Why did I f***ing say that? Hey, get this. Years later, Mayor Fussell admitted to an interviewer, a little publicity never hurt a small town. Or he said, a little publicity never done hurt a small town. Because he's evil and he's southern. Fussell estimated the Beast of Bladenboro was 10% real and 90% imagination. But also, Fussell was the one to call the newspapers about the dead dog, so he clearly found their manner of death strange enough to want to attract outside attention, whether just for attention or because it genuinely was strange. Tater Shaw lived to be 87 years old, sitting in his nursing home decades later, describing the goat with its head flat as a fritter. I mean, that is just some southern shit right there. And with Trex, the sounds of a silver dollar out there. Today, Bladenboro celebrates its infamous visitor with an annual Beast Fest, which reminds me of the Shrimp Fest of Strasburg, Virginia. The creature that once terrorized the small town has become the small town's mascot. So yeah, that's kind of epic. DoorDash, let me get something real quick. Ordering food real quick. Hold on, you bastard, you impatient bastard. Take a deep breath. This is a rest spot, or whatever it's called in the video. Hello, weary traveler. Take a rest. Maybe buy a potion or two. Maybe buy a potion at sour.gg. I have candy that I sell. My fingernails are dirty. This one freaks me out, very much so. This is really strange. The details of this little creature, whatever it is, I don't like it. The Moon-Eyed people. You ever seen it? He looks like a Moon-Eyed person, this little guy down here, this little son of a bitch here. This little bastard. What are you doing right now? You trying to get in on it, aren't you? You want me to make you your own channel, don't you? I'm not gonna. The Cherokee had a rule about the little people. The rule was do not watch. When Cherokee families woke at dawn, sometimes their cornfields would be completely cleared. Stalks gathered in neat bundles, rows weeded with surgical precision. It looked like an entire workforce had labored through the hours of darkness. But there was a price for the midnight help. Absolute secrecy in regard to who was doing it. They come near a house at night and the people inside them hear them talking, but they must not go out, wrote Lynn Losiah, Cherokee author of The Secrets and Mysteries of the Cherokee Little People. The Cherokee called them the Little People, and European settlers gave them a different name that captured their most unsettling characteristics. They called them the Moon-Eyed People. You little bastard. You little weird bastard. I'm gonna talk down to you from now on. He's into it though. Look at him. Where are his hands at? His hands are in his ship. Who knows what he's doing in there? He could be getting crazy in there. What's he doing with his hands? Don't smell his finger. You weren't supposed to watch these little people work. And those who violated the rule paid the price. Hunters who glimpsed at the little people at work found stones hurled at them as they walked home. And families who spied on the nocturnal visitors discovered their kindness withdrawn forever, their fields left untended, and their corn withering in the ground that had once been blessed. The respect these little fellows demanded was absolute, and Cherokee tradition taught that when a hunter found anything in the woods, a knife, a trinket, any object that might belong to the underground dwellers, he must say aloud, "Little people, I want to take this," because without permission, the consequences were swift and unmistakable. So who are these little tiny guys? All right, these little mysterious fellows, little tiny guys. In 1797, botanist Benjamin Smith Barton published the first written account of the Moon-Eyed People, citing Colonel Leonard Marbury, an intermediary between the Cherokee and the U.S. government. Barton wrote, "The Cherokee tell us that when they first arrive in the country which they inhabit, they found it possessed by moon-eyed people who could not see in the daytime. These wretches they expelled." That raises a lot of questions to me. Also, he spelled Cherokee so wrong. What a dumbass. So are these the same little helpful people who gathered corn, or something different? A previous population that were driven out by Cherokee expansion? Who the knows? The stories seemed to describe two different groups with potentially similar characteristics: small stature, nocturnal habits, and eyes that function better in darkness than light. For example, they only they only work on the corn at night. So very strange, something to consider. Comment below your further considerations. Physical evidence emerged in unexpected places. In the 1840s, farmer Felix Ashley discovered a 3-foot tall soapstone statue 60 miles from the Georgia mountains. And the sculpture depicted two entwined figures with oval heads and large crescent-shaped eyes, exactly matching the descriptions attributed to the Moon-Eyed People and the Holy Relic. Today, the statue sits in the Cherokee County Historical Museum in Murphy, North Carolina, and more discoveries followed. In 1882, the Cherokee Phoenix detailed the excavation of 3 burying grounds near Sparta, Tennessee, containing skeletons of extremely small statured people, the longest measuring only 19 inches. That's a tiny little fella. Several showed adult teeth worn down with age, suggesting full lifespans despite their diminutive baby size. And the bodies had been interred in stone coffins alongside items possibly made from shells. Little tiny sumbitches. Imagine it's the 1800s and you find a little sumbitch in a damn coffin. You're like, what the is that? And he's got little worn teeth, and he's just a little guy, and he's hanging out like that little South American guy that I have somewhere. Not in this office, but in a different one. No record exists of what happened to these remains, but the discovery feeds speculation that the Moon-Eyed People represented a distinct population with unusual physical characteristics compared to other people. Fort Mountain in northern Georgia bears the most substantial evidence, with an 885-foot zigzagging stone wall that archaeologists estimate was built between 500 and 1500 AD. The wall lacks defensive characteristics, it's too low for protection, there's no water source, it's poor strategic positioning, it suggests that it was ceremonial rather than for military purposes. And most people build walls for military purposes. And Emmanuel Stewart, a park manager at Fort Mountain State Park, says that it's one of the reasons why people visit every day is to ask about the Moon-Eyed People and the legend and that. And a historical marker at the end site credits Moon-Eyed People with the wall's construction, but Stewart notes that archaeological excavations have revealed few clues about its actual builders. So we have no idea. We're purely just speculating. Now, it's really important also to mention that the earliest documented accounts come from not Cherokee sources, but from white settlers eager to explain pre-Columbian ruins in terms that they could understand, the native stuff. So, you know, for some reason they're like, there were aliens up there. What the little guys, little wretches. There are also some hilarious theories from these old white folk. Descendants of the Welsh Prince Madoc Ab Owain Gwynedd, or maybe even albino communities like those found in Panama, or simply Welsh miners whose underground work earned them nocturnal reputations and legend amongst the Cherokee people. For some reason, some Europeans thought it was the Welsh, okay, and I think that's really strange. From my research, it seems like this is not a major part of Cherokee history or culture in any way, and it is most definitely European attempts to explain a cultural encounter that they couldn't comprehend, Appalachian style. So who are these little son of bitches? That's what I want to know. We need to get to the bottom of that shit. 19 inches? That's pretty small. Adult teeth? Strange. I'm growing weary of this guy. I don't like this one. This one freaks me out a little bit. 2 as well. I think I said that about all the other ones as well, but ghost stories in particular, ones along this line, wish didn't happen, alright? This is the Bell Witch. In 1817, something started tormenting the Bell family in Robertson County, Tennessee. By 1820, it had killed the father and become America's most famous ghost story. But there's an issue. Almost everything we know about this story comes from a single source that, get this, could be fabricated. This one I'm gonna push back against a little more because I have to, because it makes me feel more safe at night when I'm thinking about maybe whether or not the ghost is gonna come get me. I have to be able to skeptically dissect this one. This all started in October of 1817 when John Bell was hunting on his property. His dogs, which had tracked wildcats through the Cumberland woods, suddenly cowered behind him, and in his cornfield sat something that looked like a dog with an oversized rabbit head, and it was watching him with intelligent eyes. Bell fired his rifle, and the creature vanished. By December, the sounds began. Every night after the family went to bed, something moved through the walls of their farmhouse, scratching and gnawing. It was the sound of invisible rats chewing through wood that showed no damage in the morning. The noises followed a deliberate pattern, starting soft and building into a crescendo that would eventually shake the entire house. Fast forward a little bit to January of 1818, a 12-year-old daughter, Betsy Bell, woke up screaming with red welts across her face. Something invisible had slapped her hard enough to leave handprints on her cheeks, and after this, the attacks escalated. Her hair was pulled until she shrieked, pins driven into her skin, and her bed covers were ripped away in the freezing winter air at night. So that's pretty mean, but this entity saved its worst treatment for John Bell Sr. He began to experience facial paralysis. His tongue swelled until he couldn't speak, and during meals, his throat would constrict without warning, forcing him to struggle for breath while the invisible presence seemed to watch with satisfaction. Multiple physicians checked this guy out and had little to no medical explanation. To be fair, it's 1818, so yeah, by spring of 1818, the entity found a voice. It said, "I am a spirit." Apparently, it sounded like a weak whisper of an old woman, so
I'm a spirit.
An Appalachian old woman, I assume.
I was once very happy, but have been disturbed.
That's apparently what it said. It's good writing, dude. The voice grew stronger with each conversation until it could quote scripture with scholarly precision and debate theology with visiting ministers. It's like the Luke Belmar of ghosts, quoting scripture to debate ministers. The entity also demonstrated impossible knowledge. For example, it recited 2 different sermons that were being delivered simultaneously 13 miles apart. It shared intimate details about neighbors' private affairs. For example, how often Hank be slapping it. All right, how often he be slapping it, dude. He's like this guy. He's like this little holy relic with his little hands in his ship. The entity also spoke in accents and languages from around the world, like this one. Muchacho Chakalakalak. The voice called itself Kate and claimed to be the spirit of Kate Batts, a neighbor John Bell had disputed with over land transactions, which would be so funny. The Monopoly Man entity is mad at you. But the thing was, Kate Batts was alive and would outlive John Bell by 27 years, so. First time ever a ghost has claimed to be someone who is not dead. James Johnston, a respected church elder and the Bell's closest friend, stayed overnight to investigate, and he helped Hank slap it. The entity ripped his covers away and slapped his face. Not with his penis, but with, I don't know, its ghost hand. Sue me, I don't know, dude. We're far into the video. If you made it this far, you don't care. You're fine. In desperation, Johnston shouted, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" Silence answered him, no old lady whispers, and the rest of the night passed without incident. Word began to spread through Middle Tennessee, and hundreds of visitors descended on the Bell farm. Curiosity seekers, ministers, physicians, and scientists, geniuses, all desperate to witness what newspapers called the wonder of the 19th century. These poor family of troglodytes being slapped and beaten by an entity. That's the wonder of the 19th century. Not much going on. Seems like. What about Joseph Smith? He was discovering his iPad, or whatever them golden iPads he had. The creature seemed to love the attention that it was getting. It materialized fresh fruit from thin air. It sang drinking songs during prayer meetings. It shared gossip about activities in other households. And sometimes it left mid-conversation to investigate events miles away before returning with detailed reports. So this thing was like a thing. It wasn't a ghost so much haunting them, but it was a thing, but it also haunted them. It seems like it's chill, but also nonchalant, because beneath the spectacle was a darker purpose. Kate showed kindness only to Lucy Bell, calling her the most perfect woman to walk the earth. And John Bell Jr. received grudging respect, but Betsy endured relentless psychological warfare designed to destroy her engagement to neighbor Joshua Gardner, a campaign that eventually succeeded. So this witch broke them up, and for John Bell Sr., the entity reserved its promise of death. It quite literally said, "I have come to kill old Jack Bell," announced Kate, using a nickname only John Bell's closest friends knew. As months passed, John Bell's condition deteriorated, his facial paralysis worsened until his speech became slurred, and mysterious seizures left him bedridden for days. And on December 20th, 1820, John Bell Jr. found his father unconscious with a small vial of dark liquid in the cupboard where no medicine had been placed. For some reason, they decided to test a drop on the family cat, and the animal died and convulsed within seconds. So this was something bad. At this moment, the Bell Witch's voice filled the house with triumphant laughter. "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night when he was fast asleep. It fixed him right." John Bell Sr. died that afternoon, and as mourners gathered for his funeral, the entity sang bawdy drinking songs and laughed like a disrespectful dickhead. And Tennessee, as a result of this, became the only state to officially recognize a death caused by supernatural forces. You see, there's a problem with the story, though. Virtually every detail comes from Martin Van Buren Ingram. It comes from his 1894 book, An Authenticated History of the Famous Bell Witch. Now, this is not Martin Van Buren, the 8th President of the United States of America. This is Martin Van Buren Ingram, author of An Authenticated History of the Famous Bell Witch. Now, Ingram did claim to base his account on the diary of Richard William Bell, which was John's son, but Richard was only 6 years old when the haunting began, so there's A, 0% chance he had a f***ing diary, and B, he was probably making shit up because he's a child. Plus, no one has ever seen this diary. Modern researchers suspect it never existed. Plus, Ingram's credibility has serious issues. He's kind of a massive piece of shit. I shouldn't say that, but he's not alive, so I can slander him all I want. He claimed the Saturday Evening Post published and then retracted an 1849 article about the Bell Witch, an article that extensive archival research has never located, and his account includes themes and anachronisms inappropriate for the 1817 to 1821 period, which is pretty damning in and of itself, but most damning, every person with direct knowledge of the events was dead when Ingram began his research in the 1890s. Tabloid moment. Love this guy. So yeah, Ingram, he also made up a bunch of shit about Andrew Jackson and some guy using supernatural events as a campaign, as, I don't know, like an epithet in a campaign. I don't know, but something did create this legend. He didn't just make it up entirely. For example, an 1820 journal entry by military officer John R. Bell does describe hearing about a young woman accompanied by a mysterious voice that thousands had visited to witness. That's pretty interesting. And articles from 1856 retail parts of the Bell Witch story confirming the tale did exist, but this was decades before Ingram's embellishments. So the kernel of truth may involve poltergeist activity that is centered on troubled teenager Betsy Bell, maybe some psychological manipulation by someone with knowledge of mesmerism and stage magic, or potentially this was just, frontier hysteria. Also, Betsy Bell, during all this stuff, married her former school teacher, Richard Powell, in 1824. So basically this guy broke her up and then wanted to marry her. This guy was the ghost, okay? And this was also a dude who was 11 years her senior, who had expressed interest in her throughout the haunting. And get this, Powell possessed knowledge of mesmerism, ventriloquism, and what contemporaries would describe as mathematical genius. So the guy was pretty smart, especially compared to the others around that time. Some people suggest that Powell orchestrated the phenomena, but there is no definitive proof. I like to imagine it was real. But also that guy really wanted to have a strange relationship with a young a young girl. So, anyways. So what y'all think about that? I think that was funny, a little cool one to kind of include in this Appalachian folklore video. Comment down below. Does it seem realistic? To me, it seems like bullshit, but what do I know? All right, this is the Brown Mountain Lights. This is the Brown Mountain Lights. What are these? For over a century, mysterious lights have appeared above Brown Mountain in North Carolina, defying every attempt at a complete explanation. There's some good explanations, but there's a lot of incomplete explanations. Science has solved some of this mystery, but it couldn't solve all of it. It's kind of fun to have this at the end of our story because I think the Bell Witch one was kind of goofy. Obviously, all the missing 411 stuff is super interesting. The Vampire Beast of North Carolina as well, that's cool. But this is just so Appalachian, such an interesting, unique story. The Brown Mountain Lights to this day are still unexplained and have only gotten stranger. The lights were first officially reported around 1910 and appeared with clockwork precision. Every night at 7:30, then again at 10 o'clock, red lights would rise above the mountain's crest like a silent firework. They would hover for less than a minute and then wink out of existence. But the story probably goes back a bit further. According to family tradition, Josiah Fate Wiseman first noticed a strange flash of light around 1854 when camping in what is now known as Wiseman's View. The light appeared at the same place on the horizon at about the same time every single night, varying by at most half an hour. And Fate would return repeatedly, staring into the distance until he caught the glimpse of light. You gotta remember, 1854, this is before light. This is fucking before lights, really. Especially before automotive headlights, locomotive headlights, there's no airplanes. Lights are weird to these people. This is like magic shit. The timing of this, though, 1854, with the whole not having light thing, is interesting. The first train in western North Carolina began nightly service between Morganton and Salisbury in 1858. And trains follow consistent schedules, just like Fate's Light did, but it doesn't explain everything that came later. And it doesn't even really explain that, in my opinion, all right? Because there's a sun reflecting off a train. What are you talking about? It's aliens! Of course. By 1913, the lights had gained some serious attention. The Charlotte Daily Observer described mysterious lights seen just above the horizon every night, red in color, appearing punctually at specific times. Anderson Lovin was described as an old and reliable resident, had been watching them since 1897. I think he's a damn goober. That's what I think he is. Some bitch up there watching lights up there. It's weird as hell. The mystery reached...